Hello everyone, and welcome to our Church Militant interview and our continuing cavalcade of interview of Catholic candidates, solid Catholic candidates. Today we have with us Jacky Eubanks. Hello Jacky, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Very good. You are running for a state representative House seat here in the state of Michigan.
Yes.
I think the very first thing everybody would say is, are you kidding me? Is she old enough to run?
I get that a lot, to be honest with you. But the thing is, I think we need more Gen Z Catholics running for office. The average age in Congress, for example, is 68, and the average age in the United States is 38. So we have a serious problem. Our government does not represent the people of the United States, and I'm trying to represent Gen Z and Catholics.
Is there a bit of a conflict, do you think, between, like you see all these polls and information with Gen Z, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in this, they don't believe in that, they're all down with abortion, they're all down with, same-sex marriage, blah, 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 and all this stuff and everything. Are you on a little bit of an island in your generation?
So I don't think so. I think that that's a misconception. I do know that 51% of Gen Z would consider itself socialist, and that's according to the Victims of Communism Foundation. But that means that 49% don't. Mm-hmm. And the 49% I'm seeing more and more are actually returning to traditional conservative values.
Well, that's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your district. Okay, it's Chesterfield Township, which is kind of, if you do the Michigan thumb thingy for people, it's like kind of up here area. It's the state got redrawn with obviously the 2020 census results. Your district is a brand new district.
Yes.
So tell us about the dynamics of that.
So what's really nice about it is it's split 50-50 between Macomb County and St. Clair County. Both of those went red in 2020. Mm-hmm. And I love Macomb County, and I love that it was a bellwether county and that it went for Trump in 2016 and 2020. Mm-hmm. St. Clair County is a little bit tougher for me because I'm not from there. And it's a bit tough to put your new name and face into established politics. Yeah. And it's definitely establishment over in St. Clair County.
How do you weather this? You're shortly 25. You graduated from Hillsdale here in Michigan, which has a reputation of being sort of like the Catholic, not Catholic college in the country. How do you square all of the, let's just face it, kind of the dirtiness of politics and the slime and the swamp and all of this? How do you walk into that as a young Catholic and say, all right, this all has to be dealt with?
Yeah. So first of all, you need to be praying the rosary every single day. You need to be going to Mass every single week. You need to be receiving the Eucharist. If you have any sin on your soul, you have to go to confession before that, of course. I would say, I was reading Proverbs, this was a couple months ago, and it was made very clear that you cannot walk in the ways of the wicked, right? And the reason why we're in the political climate that we're in is because people have been walking in the ways of the wicked when they run for office.
Right.
I am not doing that. Something I'm very proud of is that I have not received any corporate or lobbyist money. All of my donations come from moms and dads, veterans, truck drivers. In fact, I have 5 families of homeschool kids, up to 10 kids each, and they're supporting me. So you gotta not go down the path that the evil ones walk. You have to go on the godly path.
How do you square up and say, well, gee, this just is the way things are done in Washington? You have to pay for TV ads and billboards and all of this. Do you assume you get past the primary, which if you're here in Michigan is August 2nd. We'll be keeping obviously an eye on your race. And then you move into the general. That it's a new district here. Perhaps nationally to a degree, the national Democratic force won't have their eye on this local race so much, but certainly the state Democratic establishment will. They're going to hit you with everything they've got, which is money. It's all funded by bad people. Satan has a lot of money. God has more, but right. Satan's a lot more free with it sometimes. Is there? What do you do, sort of in the face of that kind of, massive expense and pouring and trying to smear you and all of that? And this is, of course, if you get past the Republican establishment in the primary.
Right. God has been so good to me. I felt called to do this. This is kind of shocking, and they're going to crucify me for this one, but I used to work in Washington, D.C., and I promise every night at about 4:30 a.m. in the morning, I would wake up and I would just feel God saying, you need to set my people free from usury, okay, the sin of usury, which is destroying our society, okay, and there's a whole host of things that go along with that, but regardless, if God calls you to a mission, there is nothing that the devil can do to stop that. If God is going to make a way, he's going to make a way. And so there was a point in time where I was hurting for cash, and I got down on my knees and I prayed, and I asked everybody in my circle to pray. And within 5 days, we brought in $31,500. So, and I was at a point where I needed door knocker volunteers, I needed an event scheduler, I needed somebody to do my social media and do it all for free. And God has provided overabundantly in all of those fields. So I do believe that this is God bringing together a coalition of true conservatives to help save this country. And I know that we've all been praying for that for a very long time.
Sure, yeah, we've been praying, some of us have been praying for that before you were born. That's why for me, it's kind of a personal pleasure to be able to sit here and interview candidates like you who are Catholics. I've been saying for years, we're the Catholics. We're the Catholics. We're the Catholics who believe. We know there's tons of Catholics with a K. Biden and Pelosi and all the sort of the big name crowd of them, Kennedys and all that. It's like, where is the sort of groundswell of people who understand the faith, believe the faith, understand that there has to be a convergence of faith into politics, and it has to be formed that way. So for me personally, it's always a great pleasure to be able to sit here and do this. We interviewed John Gibbs sitting here, who's running for seat here in Michigan. I'm sorry, for the congressional seat. I can't remember the district. I think it's 3, but sorry, John, if you're watching. But same thing, a new convert to the faith, loves it, understands all of that. So for me, these interviews are fun. I get to go, yeah, finally. Look at this for 30 years, and it's like, and finally it's happening. Yeah. Let's talk about the faith and politics. First of all, just to go on the record, you're a faithful Catholic, meaning you believe everything the Church teaches?
Yes.
Everything?
Yes.
Everything?
Yes.
So you are, you see that the use of contraception is against natural moral law?
Yes.
Is destructive, a doorway to abortion, blah, blah, and all that and everything else.
Yes.
So, you're the type of candidate for office that the left would be terrified of. Since you support Catholicism and all of its teachings and so forth, you are automatically a hater. Yep. You detest everybody who doesn't. You think everybody who's opposed to the church should be executed in the public square. That's the way they'll portray you.
Sure.
But talk about how important your faith is to you on the political level. If laws or things are going to come up, we see everything going on with Roe, for example, right now, and all the left, becoming completely uncorked, losing their minds. The question, they're saying they're coming after your gay marriage next. They're coming after your birth control after that and everything else. Well, you know what? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yes. So we need to make a plain statement of fact, which is the reason why the West is great is because Western civilization's underpinning is Christianity. And Christendom was Catholic, majority Catholic, for the majority of Western civilization. And so you cannot have a successful society outside of the Christian moral order. And things like abortion and things like gay marriage are outside of the Christian moral order, and they lead to chaos and destruction and a culture of death, which is why we're seeing that today. We have abandoned the Christian moral order as a nation, and we are reaping that destruction.
Do you think you are going to somehow be able to put up a stalwart defense against charges of, you just want a theocracy. You're one of these crazy extremists who blah, 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 blah. First of all, I don't think there's anything wrong with being an extremist. Martin Luther King was an extremist. The idea that you're an extremist sort of paints in people's heads that, therefore nothing you say should be counted as having any meaning. Almost every good movement in the world was an extreme movement.
I don't see what we believe is extreme at all.
Right.
This was what was normal for 2,000 years, okay? So things like no-fault divorce, things like abortion, things like gay marriage, all of those things were not legal. Even blasphemy was not legal in the United States until the latter half of the 20th century. Woohoo, 60 years of liberalism, and look where we are. Our society is heavily medicated, full of mental illness. There's been over 60 million children aborted. Children of divorce are, among the most depressed, and divorce is so widespread. this is abnormal. The society we're living in today is abnormal historically, and we internally feel that it's abnormal. But I think that the real radicals are the ones who decide that we're going to turn to a Marxist secular utopia on earth. Those are the ones who are really radical. I'm saying we need to return to God's moral order. That's not radical.
No, it's not. Well, if they say, okay, well, you're just trying to impose your morality on everybody else. How do you answer that?
God's morality is for everybody, and it's the only thing that's going to give us a safe, prosperous, happy society. So if you ultimately want happiness, in the Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of happiness, you cannot have happiness outside of God's moral order. If you try to live outside of that, you're inevitably going to be miserable.
Yeah, I think that's true. You look at all the, every statistic you look at is, the suicides and depression and just everything.
Overdoses on drugs, opioid addiction, everything.
Among young people.
Yeah.
Among young people, it's really horrifying. Let me come back to the contraception question if I can, because there is, within the pro-life movement, you're a lifelong Michigander, there is a split saying, well, contraception's okay. What matters is, you don't abort the baby. And, if you happen to get pregnant. And that largely splits among religious lines. For the most part, within the pro-life movement, for the most part, Protestants are down with contraception, or as long as it's not abortifacient and this and that and everything else. And of course, some of these things become extremely gray. There's not necessarily a way to know that. And Catholics, who have really been the tip of the spear of the pro-life movement ever since Roe v. Wade, are like, no, you can't have contraception in this. It seems like that issue within the pro-life world needs to be settled. What are your thoughts on that?
We have a declining population. And contrary to what the global elites might want you to think, we do not have an overpopulation problem. We have an underpopulation problem. People are not reproducing. People are not having children. Families are shrinking. We don't have enough Gen Z to support the aging boomers on Social Security. That's bad. But all of this could be avoided if we were actually a truly pro-life culture, which means conceiving a child is a beautiful and sacred thing. And that is why sex ought to be between one man and one woman in the confines of marriage.
And open to life.
And open to life, absolutely.
From a Catholic standpoint, if you go to the Didache was the compilation, I suppose you could put it, as and just the teachings of the apostles. It's actually what it means, teaching. And right in there, from the earliest days, it says no birth control, no contraception. In some editions or translations, it calls it sorcery, but it's all meant to prevent conceiving a child. During Amy Coney Barrett's nomination hearings, they kept coming after her on the Griswold case, which I think, that's the one that made contraception legal in the United States back in the late 60s. I was really sort of struck by that. They talked a little bit about Roe, but they seem to have understood. Kuhn and Blumenthal, the Democratic senators, seem to understand the connection of contraception and abortion. They didn't really talk that much about Roe. They kept quizzing her about Griswold. So it seems there's an awareness on the left that, boy, once you go after abortion, in their point of view, it's a slippery slope to Griswold and Obergefell and all the rest of them. It's probably impossible that this sort of thing isn't going to come up in your campaign. How do you answer the local press person who might be your age and just sees you as some loony who thinks she wants to take away your birth control?
Well,
in the state of Michigan.
Sure. So I guess we have to ask ourselves, would that ever come to a vote in the Michigan State Legislature? And if it should, I would have to side with it should not be legal. And I think that people believe that birth control better, like you said, because, oh, then you won't get pregnant and you won't need to have an abortion. But I think that it gives people the false sense of security that they can have consequence-free sex, and that's not true and it's not correct. But if there is no such thing as consequence-free sex, in reality, there's nothing to prevent conception other than, you could say, NFP, which is a Catholic thing, natural family planning. People are going to take it more seriously and be more careful about their actions. And I think people would actually be more likely to wait until marriage, to practice chastity, which is incredibly important. I think that the birth rate of children outside of wedlock would probably go down in that case.
Yeah, there certainly seems to be some data analysis to suggest that as well. You have if I can read your statement here, I am uncompromising in my belief that human life begins at conception and ends at natural death. That is pretty darn close to almost, I think you cut and pasted from the catechism there. Good for you. Do you think there is, within the wider circle right now, because now as it sure looks like Roe is going to be overturned, we don't know that for certain, but it sure looks like it. Roe is over, as we're sitting here doing this interview today, that's the likelihood, which of course everything goes back to the states,
sure,
which makes a position that you're running for all of a sudden become massively important.
Yes. Yes, so the Michigan Constitution says that abortion is completely illegal in the state of Michigan, and there's going to be an active effort on the part of the Democrats. Already they're underway. They filed lawsuits to keep abortion legal in Michigan if Roe v. Wade is overturned at the federal level. I would never vote to legalize abortion. If it came to a vote, I would never do so.
When you see the establishment here in Michigan, the Democratic establishment, really put in place by the lethargy of the Republican establishment back in the last election cycle. Gretchen Whitmer, during COVID, kept all the abortion chambers open here, wore her little pink I Love Planned Parenthood baseball hat, posted it all over social media. The state is certainly, in its current iteration, is largely pro-abortion. If we think of pro-abortion meaning, you at least allow abortion in some case. That puts you in that Michigan State House, if you win, as maybe not a lone voice, but probably in the minority. You're going to get beat up. They're going to say bad things about you. They're going to make stuff up about you.
Well, they did that to Jesus, too.
Good answer. Good answer. What do you do about all that?
There are things that we cannot.
You're going to get the Marjorie Taylor Greene treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm planning on having happen. I was actually informed by somebody who's currently in the state legislature that if I get elected, very likely I'm going to have my committee assignments stripped of me, and they're going to try to label me as crazy, which is very funny because I graduated with honors from a college that is more academically rigorous than Harvard University, but whatever. So yeah, they're going to try to label me crazy. And basically, if they do that, I still, as a state rep, would have the ability to subpoena, to investigate, and I would just investigate everyone for corruption. I mean, our state is the most corrupt in the union, according to the DOJ. So if there's all that corruption and you're going to strip me of my committee assignments, I'm going to have a lot of time to investigate all that corruption. And I will have no qualms about bringing it to the public and blasting it out there, because the darkness needs to be brought to the light.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I asked you before we started shooting, who's your political hero? Tell the audience.
I was going to say, yeah, definitely right now it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. I absolutely adored President Trump. I'm sad that he's not currently in the White House. I used to think I was a Reaganite and a Winston Churchill fan, but maybe my perspective has changed as I've learned more.
Why?
Reagan helped legalize abortion in California when he was governor.
Yeah. Yeah, he put Sandra Day O'Connor on the court. Mm-hmm. He put Anthony Kennedy on the court.
Yeah.
Wasn't, in fairness to him, Anthony Kennedy was a default thing because the whole Bork disaster that happened. But still, anyway, that's what on some of the social moral issues. I think your assessment is probably correct as we look back now in time. That a lot of people who are dyed-in-the-wool political conservatives, especially Orthodox Catholics, same people, are disappointed in various aspects of the Reagan legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think? Tell me why Marjorie is your political hero.
Because she is not afraid to tell the truth. Something that she got beat up a lot for is that she put a sign outside of her congressional office that said, male and female, he created them, quoting Genesis. And apparently the congresswoman directly across the hall from her has a transgender daughter. And this was supposed to be radical and crazy and offensive. The vast majority of Americans are not on board with the radical transgender agenda. Right. She actually represents the majority of Americans in her views, and what she's saying is the truth. That's
a good reason to put someone down as your hero. Obviously we did our interview with her 3 weeks ago or something, and I have to say a lot of what you're saying and how you are reminds me of her. She's obviously a little bit older than you, but that's never talk about a woman's age. But yeah, there's a lot of. Do you think there is? I mean, you touched on it earlier. Do you think there is kind of a up and coming within political circles, an up and coming solid Catholic pushback against all of this madness we see in the culture? And if you think that, why do you think it's happening?
So I do think that that's true, and I'm not completely sure why that is necessarily, except that I liken the time that we're in to, unfortunately, the American Civil War, or the era around that time. Yeah. There was a huge moral divide in the country. And, people were praying and praying and praying, God deliver us from the evil. But at that point, the evil was clearly on one side and the good was clearly on the other. And we're rapidly facing that again. And I do believe that the prayers of the faithful are being answered, and God is trying to bring about a peaceful solution to the moral crisis facing our society. And I believe that what that looks like is raising up a generation of saints. And I believe there's a John Paul II quote that is something along that lines, mm-hmm. that the greatest generation of saints will rise up within the 21st century, or something along that.
Oh, well, let's hope so. You and or your family follow Church Militant?
Yeah, so my Uncle Tony and Aunt Sherry are what actually introduced me to
Shout
Church
out to Tony and Sherry.
Yeah. So.
Is there a... look, most people watch us, we're crazies and, nuts and, whatever, who cares what as I say in many talks, why do you care what the enemies of Christ think about you?
Right.
As a matter of fact, that's a little badge of honor you should carry around with you.
Right. God's going to judge you after you die, and right. All you should care about is what he thinks of you once you're dead and you're, standing at the final gates. That's who you should care about. What your enemies think about you does not matter. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is what God thinks of you.
Do you think there is, last question, do you think there is a chance, a good chance, that the left is going to become extremely violent?
Oh, absolutely.
In the aftermath of what sure looks like something of a red wave or whatever who knows how it's going to turn out, but there doesn't seem to be anything to indicate anything else other than not just a Republican win, but that Republican win in November on state levels as well as federal is going to be a very conservative anti-GOP establishment win. Not just a GOP wave, but a particular type of GOP candidate, of which you would count yourself as one of them. You can't imagine, can you, that the left isn't going to just lose its mind if that happens. Not just a red wave, but a particular type of red wave.
Right, so the modern left is Marxist, and it has been pushing for a Marxist revolution for a long time. And it uses mob violence to achieve its political ends because its ideas are so unpopular to average Americans that the only way it can achieve anything is through violence, which is why we saw them burning down the country in the summer of 2020, all because of St. George Floyd. But yes, I do believe that they're going to turn violent.
Who held a gun to a pregnant woman's belly.
Right.
Yeah.
And was high on, fentanyl the whole time?
I believe so, yeah.
Unfortunately, and that's sad.
It's very sad, but yeah.
But
Just so we're clear, nobody's saying what happened to him should have happened.
Right.
What we're saying is the saint part of that is a little overstated.
yes, absolutely. And so they're going to turn violent. They've already Molotov cocktailed a crisis pregnancy center. I'm hoping that through God's grace, we can use the political positions of legal power that conservatives will get to crush that revolutionary force. Otherwise, it's going to be very bad. And my whole goal in running for office is to prevent a Marxist revolution from taking place in our country, which is what they have been trying to foment for a long time. And if they see that they're losing politically, which they're going to result to mob violence.
Yeah, no, that's true. They've gotten very, very close to the brass ring. It's almost within grasp. In some ways, they're actually touching it, but they don't have the grasp on it yet. And Jacky Eubanks, running for state rep here in Michigan, is going to be one of the people that hopefully they'll have to contend with.
Yeah. Over my dead body, this country will be communist, and I mean that.
Excellent. God bless you, Jacky. Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you so
Thank you for
much.
coming on.